Hey out there, I'm Keith Jones. I'm sitting here with John Liebman, and you're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. We're coming to you today from the MTD booth at the 2018 Summer NAMM Show in Nashville, Tennessee with Keith Jones. What's happening, Keith?
Hey John, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Well, you've done so much stuff, I almost don't know where to start. So let's start at the beginning. You are from Kingston, Jamaica.
Born and raised. Kingston, Jamaica, that's where I hail from.
How were you first exposed to music and how'd you become a bass player?
I don't know if you ever heard of a guitar player. His name is Ernest Ranglin.
Yes.
Very famous jazz guitar player.
Angeline Saris plays bass with him, I believe.
You might know better than I do, but
okay.
Ernest Ranglin just so happened to live on my street in Jamaica, and I'd hear his trio rehearsing when I was 10 years old.
Wow.
I'd hear him rehearsing. I got the gumption one day to just walk up to the window, and he busted me and said, "Come on in, kid."
Wow. You know who lived down the street from me when I was 7 years old? You ever hear of Mitch Ryder?
Of course. and the CC Riders, right?
And the Detroit Wheels. No, CC Ryder was one of them.
Mitch Ryder and Detroit Wheels. Exactly.
Yes, that was very exciting for us. Well, what about Family Man and Robbie Shakespeare and those guys? Were they around at the time, or
They were around at the time. They were kind of like the famous generation just ahead of me. But you know, we started out with a band when I was about 13 with most of the members, like the members of the Third World Band, Willie Stewart, Inner Circle. We were all contemporaries. We used to hang out and bug each other's mothers and rehearse in the backyard and you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm still friends with all those guys, man. I've been living in Florida for the last 4 years and reunited with all these guys after 50 years.
Wow. Well, what kind of music were you hearing? Was it confined to the Jamaican and the reggae? Or you must have had radio, and I know you didn't have YouTube or MTV, but what did you have?
Well, I mean, my musical background is pretty diverse. The first music that turned me on was classical guitar. That was my first love.
From radio or what?
From records. My father had a pretty extensive record collection, including a group from South America called Los Indios Tabajaros. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
Was that two brothers?
Two brothers.
I saw them on a Johnny Carson show about 100 years ago.
That sparked me, like that set me on fire. And
they did a song called Penelope.
You know what? Sing hum a few bars.
Can't. I just told you it was 100 years ago, so I don't remember.
Anyway, that sparked my interest, and then I started hearing Andre Segovia, and then
I saw Segovia.
Lucky you. Yeah. And then there was Ernest Ranglin with the jazz guitar. So anyway, to connect the stories, he pulled me in. I told him I'd like to learn how to play guitar. He said, "Go buy one." So I bought one and walked in for my first lesson. He scribbled down some notes on the paper and said, "Go home and learn this."
Ooh, Ranglin?
Ranglin did. So I started out learning by reading. He's definitely into education.
Throughout your career, though, you've played with everybody from Wayne Shorter to Carlos Santana to Jean-Luc Ponty you're playing with now, and who else? Andy Narell. And so let's connect those dots. How did your career get rolling from living down the street from Ernest Ranglin to all those things and more that you've done and are doing and will do?
Yeah, it's not over. It's not over yet, right?
Well, thank goodness for that.
Well, you know, there's a lot of diversity in the music in Jamaica because we were inhabited by British people, Spanish people, Iranian people. A lot of Persians moved to Jamaica. You know, businessmen. Indian. My mother is part Indian. So the
population is not that big, though, is it?
It's fairly large. I don't know what it is now, but it's a big city. I mean, Jamaica is very well populated. But apart from that, the diversity of music, we heard everything. We heard the classics. We heard jazz. We heard Indian music on Sundays. There's an Indian hour.
Ravi Shankar and that stuff?
That kind of stuff, yeah, Indian dot. And yeah, I mean, I'd be listening to that stuff while I was mowing the lawn, you know? It's like, so.
And your Walkman, right?
Not way before Walkman, but don't tell anybody. So, yeah,
You mean cranking the stereo really loud in the garage? Or something?
crank the stereo. Oh,
I like that.
you can't go 2 feet in Jamaica without hearing a different kind of music because everybody's blasting something from their house.
I love it.
If you're shopping, everybody's blasting something out of their shop window. You know,
Back then, or only, or today too?
till today. It's music everywhere.
So how did you get started getting hired to play the bass for money as a professional musician?
Well, it started out with guitar. By the time I moved to, I actually went to school, University of Michigan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So did I.
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Okay.
That's right. So actually went there on scholarship in 1969.
Wow, because I went there, then I went to University of Miami. So I went from Bo Schembechler to Howard Schnellenberger. Football coaches.
Oh, okay, I got you. That's beyond me. I'm more into tennis, you know. Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer.
Fewer injuries.
Fewer injuries.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went to school, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Was overwhelmed with the amount of music. 1969. It was just FM radio. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. I mean, you name it. It was on the radio. So that was just a treat for me. And
You mean, so you were hearing this stuff that you had not heard in Jamaica?
Not heard in Jamaica. I mean, I was familiar with Jimi Hendrix, but just the wealth of of all this different kind of music.
Yeah. Creedence was at their peak then. Creedence Clearwater.
Yeah.
And Jethro Tull had come out with their first album around '69, and
Jethro
Led
Tull.
Zeppelin was just on the.
It goes even into the Carpenters.
I think Karen Carpenter has one of the most beautiful voices of anyone. Her and what's her name? Astrud Gilberto.
Gilberto.
Those are my two favorite female voices. But I digress. Go ahead.
Well, also Flora Purim, but we'll get to that.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, we'll get to
Ayrton.
Flow and Toe in a minute. So anyway, from there, I actually got very frustrated playing guitar because I could not get my guitar to sound like Jimi Hendrix. I didn't know how. I couldn't figure out how he did that. So I got a gig. Somebody offered me a gig playing bass at Thanos Lamplighter. It made good steaks. So I took the gig, and Gibson EBO bass, my first bass, little Gibson EBO, and started to like it. Then I started to pay more attention to bass tones and bass playing, and I heard the album First Light, Freddie Hubbard. Ron Carter is my that's my model for bass tone.
He's also from Detroit,
Really? Had no idea.
or maybe Ferndale, Michigan, I think.
Had no idea. Ron Carter's bass tone was like nothing else to my ear because it was acoustic, but it had this electric quality. He didn't play it like it was funky, and he's doing all these pull-offs, and loved it. So bass kind of filtered into my world and became the main thing.
Did you ever play upright bass?
For about a minute. I could never afford one that sounded, that had the tone that I wanted, you know. So
I know you're
fretless is the next best thing. I love fretless bass.
you have something to share about Ayrton and Flora Purim?
Yeah, I was thinking about it this morning, in the quiet of the morning, and realized what a huge influence they were on my whole musical development, because just that introduction to Brazilian music, which I think is the most encompassing music on the planet. I mean, for what from the African side, from the percussive side, from the melodic side, from the Portuguese and the Spanish, and from the romance, from the English side, from the Chorinos, and the whole from the European influence. I think I learned more with them about the complexity and totality of music than in any other situation. It's really, really stuck with me. And also free playing.
Yes.
We'd start our show just playing free. And so it required a certain commitment and trust, and yeah, I could go into it more, but it's, just in a nutshell, that's been the one that has stamped me.
Yes, I remember discovering their music back in, it must have been the mid or late 70s when I first became familiar with it.
That's why.
I mentioned that we're sitting here in the MTD booth.
Yes.
Michael Tobias makes a great product, and I know you've been playing MTD basses for a while. You have a signature model, I believe.
Actually, yeah, Michael just made me a signature model. Actually, I've been playing Tobias basses for a while, and I left the fold for a lot of years after, there was a business shift.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens. So I actually have been working with another company, a Japanese company, but I was just feeling the need to reconnect with the Tobias family, because that's really what it is.
It is.
It's a family, and I hooked up with Michael when I moved to LA in like 1998 and fell in love with the product there. And he was so gracious, man. We'd go into the back and he'd look at the woods and he'd go, well, what kind of wood do you want?
I remember visiting his shop around 1988 or 89 on Cahuenga. In Hollow, yes. I was a bit overwhelmed, and he knew exactly which kind of wood and what kind of sustain and
what character the wood was going to have. But we hardly ever mentioned weight, and I found that out when I had the Bobinga bass, which sounded great, but I couldn't carry it around for more than half an hour.
Yeah.
But another great thing about that shop was just being able to meet the Jimmy Haslips and to meet it was a hang.
Yes, it was.
It was a total hang.
I still have 2 5-strings. One is fretted, one is fretless.
Yeah.
They're still my prized basses. But tell me overall what you like, other than the kinds of wood and all that, the end product and playing them. What do you like about MTD basses, the product that Mike Tobias makes?
This is going to be my first MTD bass, and I picked it up yesterday, and I have been playing it in my hotel room since then. I'm serious. I haven't put it down, because even acoustically, you can hear the tone.
Yes.
Which that's something I've always believed. You can put all the electronics you want in the world in a bass, but unless the product acoustically is resonant and has quality, it's never going to work.
I remember Mike telling me back at that time in the 80s, he said, when you get the right kind of wood, you have to have the right kind of pickups.
Right.
Because a certain kind of pickups are going to sound like those pickups sound no matter what. Exactly. But if you put the right kind of pickups in, he uses Bartolini pickups, I believe.
Right.
But that's going to make bring the wood, the sound of the wood out.
You're actually amplifying the acoustic sound of the instrument.
Yes.
Instead of creating an electronic facsimile of something else.
Exactly. That's the point. And a beautiful product.
Yeah.
Tell me about the rest of your gear. What kind of strings do you use?
I've been using labella since my first classical guitar, when I was 10 years old.
And when you became a bass player, you just stuck with what you loved, right?
With labella, and I happened to meet Richard Coco at a show. What a wonderful man. We talked about it. I was on tour with Santana. I ordered 20 sets of strings, and he never sent me a bill.
Wow. Well, I hope he's not watching this.
He never. Maybe he just forgot.
Eric and Lorenzo do a great job with the company now too.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a family tradition. It's kind of like Daniel, moving into that position with Michael.
Mike's son.
He's gleaning him for that role.
What about the rest of you? What kind of amps do you play?
I'm endorsing Aguilar right now on the road. That's my road gear. But I also have an Eden that way back from one of the early Edens, Navigator preamp and their power amp that I've been using since David Eden left SWR. Actually, I've had that amp, and that's my other rig. But when I'm on the road, I use Aguilars, which I love.
Yeah, what's not to love? What's keeping you busy these days, Keith?
Well, I just came off a little mini tour with Kebmo, who's a local hero, and I've known Kebmo since LA, maybe 30 years, maybe more.
Yeah, we interviewed him on my other site called ForGuitarPlayersOnly.com.
Yes. Oh, he's a wonderful soul. So Yeah, I happened to be visiting Nashville, and he asked me if I wanted to go on the road for a little stint. Sure. 2 days rehearsal, we're out. Wow. Right? So, and I think I'll be doing some more stuff with him in September. Jean-Luc Ponty is coming up. That tour starts August 10th in Chicago.
I know you're coming through Detroit. I think you're going to be at Shane Park on the riverfront. Beautiful venue.
You'll be there.
I'll be there.
Also, Ralph Armstrong is going to be. Ralph's going to be sitting in with us.
I thought that was supposed to be a surprise, but
sorry, cat's out of the bag.
Yeah. What about the future? I mean, my goodness, you've done so much. What else would you like to do that you haven't accomplished yet?
Well, you know, I gave up bass playing for a while. I hung it up for a minute. And got into producing and engineering, and I love live recording. I've been in a lot of studios, I've done a lot of albums, and I've seen a lot of things corrected, and I've seen a lot of things perfected. I happen to like the energy,
spontaneity
the spontaneity of live playing, and the audience feedback, and the you know, the wholeness of the situation.
Yes.
You know, so I started a company in LA called Recorded Live. You can see some of the stuff recordedlive.com just before I moved to Florida, which I had to do to take care of my father's passing and all that kind of stuff. But that's a passion of mine, and I just finished a project with an outfit. It's the Art of Imagination Jazz Orchestra. A 17-piece big band that I recorded live in Florida.
Wow. Is that available for us to hear?
Yeah, the Art of Imagination Jazz Orchestra.
Okay.
And Greg Diaz is the founder. And I met him on a gig and realized that he had something else going on. So we started to talk. I said, hey man, I'll come on and record you live. And that is the result of that.
Oh, that's great.
Incredible arrangements and playing. If there's one thing that Florida is not lacking, it's horn players.
Yes. Well, I lived there for 6 years, so I
players.
Played with a lot of them.
Yeah.
And Arturo Sandoval was down there a lot. Paquito de Rivera used to spend a lot of time there.
I think Wayne Shorter lives in Florida.
Yes, I believe that. Boy, I've seen Wayne with Weather Report and with his own band. And boy,
yeah, that was another high point in my career.
I bet it was.
Playing with Wayne. I got to tell you, I had my ass kicked, like musically and conceptually, and just diving into that level of musicianship.
I just saw him about at the 2017 Detroit Jazz Festival with John Petrucci and Brian Blake.
What an incredible composer and musician and human being, actually. He's a very special man.
Never met him personally, but oh yes, that I've read about him. There's so much more we can talk about, but I don't think we've scratched the surface on you and your career, and I think maybe we'll do a follow-up interview in the not too distant future, and we can dive a little bit deeper into you and your life and your career and who knows what else. I do have one more question for you. What would you be if you weren't a bass player? It's something outside of music.
I'd be what I do when I'm not a bass player. I'd be in the studio, I'd be an engineer,
No, it's got to be outside of music.
It's got to be outside of music? Yeah. A tennis player.
Okay.
I love the sport. I think it's the next best thing to playing music, except that there's nobody to blame.
That's right.
You can always, blame the drummer or something if something goes wrong. But tennis is a singular sport. There's nobody to blame. There are no excuses.
I think John McEnroe used to find other people to blame for who knows what.
Oh, John McEnroe plays guitar. The Bryant Brothers. The Bryant Brothers they have a rock and roll band. They recorded at a studio that I use in LA, Stag Street Studios. Yeah, they record there.
I never knew that. You see, all kinds of stuff will come up. Who knows what we'll get into next time.
All right.
But for this time, we've got to leave it at that.
All right, man.
Such a pleasure. On location at the MTD booth at the 2018 Summer NAMM Show, Nashville, Tennessee, with bass and music legend Keith Jones. I'm John Liebman. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
It's a pleasure, John.